Imagine a 24-year-old Lewis Hamilton lining up on the grid against his 34-year-old self in identical machinery. Who the hell would cross the finish line first? At what age is an F1 driver actually at their fastest? What age do they actually fall off? Today, we're finding out. To truly understand how peak age manifests in Formula One, let's examine the careers of several legendary drivers, each with their own unique trajectory, starting with Sebastian Vettel, who perhaps the clearest example of a driver who peaked extremely early. After a sensational debut as a teenager and a win with Toro Rosso at 21, Vettel became the youngest world champion in Formula One history at just 23. What followed was one of the most dominant stretches in modern F1. Vettel won 4 consecutive championships from 2010 to 2013, all before the age of 27. In that period, he was known for his ruthless qualifying speed, metronomic consistency out front, and an uncanny ability to extract performance from Adrian Newey's aerodynamic masterpieces. At his best, particularly in the second half of 2013, Vettel looked unbeatable, stringing together 9 straight wins to close out the season. But what makes Vettel's career trajectory so fascinating is that his peak came and went before most drivers even reached theirs. After the regulation changes in 2014 and a move to Ferrari in 2015, Vettel was still fast, winning races and contending for titles in 2017 and 2018, but he never recaptured the dominance of his Red Bull years. Mistakes began to creep in, especially under pressure. Hockenheim 2018 is a simple example, and by his early 30s, his edge seemed dulled. Vettel's peak came early, burned bright, and faded just as fast. A textbook example of a driver whose youth carried his peak performance years, with age and circumstance bringing an early decline.
There's just 112 days until we're in Australia. What are your plans now between what are you going to be doing over the winter break?
What are your plans? You seem to be counting the days. Can't wait.
However, on the other end of this gradient is Nigel Mansell as the ultimate late bloomer success story in Formula One. Known for his gutsy, aggressive style and relentless work ethic, Mansell spent most of the 1980s as a nearly man, fast, passionate, but unlucky or outclassed by better machinery or more polished rivals like Prost and Senna. He came painfully close to titles in 1986 and 1987, but it wasn't until 1992, at the age of 39, that Mansell finally won the championship, becoming one of the oldest first-time world champions in F1 history. That season, he absolutely annihilated the field with a legendary active suspension Williams FW14B, winning 9 of 16 races and clinching the title with 5 races to spare. So, what changed? In a word, everything. Mansell finally had a dominant car, years of experience, and sheer desperation to win before his window closed. After that, he left F1, won the CART title in America the following year, and made a couple of strange returns to F1 in the mid-90s, but his 1992 season stands out as a late career summit with just one peak. But what would a smooth peak look like?
Just turn my knuckles around the wheel and just go straight.
That would be your Jenson Button's career. It's best described as quiet perseverance, slow evolution, and a peak that came not at the expected age, but just as most had written him off. Debuting in 2000 at the tender age of 20, Button spent years bouncing between midfield teams, showing flashes of talent, but never quite delivering on early hype. He won his first race in 2006 after 113 starts, but it wasn't until 2009, nearly a decade into his career and at age 29, that he stunned the world by winning the World Championship with the underdog Braun GP team. What makes Button's trajectory different is that his true driving peak arguably came after his title. From 2010 to 2012, during his time at McLaren, Button consistently outperformed faster teammates, even Lewis Hamilton at times, and many believe he was driving better in those years, age 30 to 32, than when he won the title. Button never relied on raw aggression. He was a driver who matured into a thinker, a craftsman. His decline came gently, and even in his mid-30s, he remained a match for younger teammates. However, he's mostly an anomaly. Most drivers follow a vicious cycle of peaking before 30, even the best ones out there.
He keeps doing that. He keeps doing that, doesn't he? It would be all right if it was straight. It was like that, but it's like that for some reason. I don't know why that is. Yes!
Michael Schumacher's career offers a fascinating case study in peak performance ages. He became a double world champion relatively early, winning titles at 25 and 26 in 1994 and 1995 with Benetton. During this early period, Schumacher was known for his incredible raw speed and determination, often extracting performance from his car that seemed impossible. Yet many analysts argue that Schumacher reached his true peak during his Ferrari years, roughly between ages 32 and 35, when he strung together an unprecedented 5 consecutive championships, 2000 to 2004. By then, he had over a decade of F1 experience, and he combined that wisdom with still formidable pace, a potent mix that made him nearly unbeatable. After 2004, as he entered his late 30s, Schumacher's performance began to dip slightly. He was 37 when he retired the first time in 2006, still competitive, but no longer the dominant force he had been just 2 years earlier. Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari is basically going through the same thing right now, and I know some of you don't like to hear this, but we'll talk about him a little later. Schumacher's late career decline became more evident during his 2010 to 2012 comeback with Mercedes. At ages 41 to 43, Schumacher was still a highly skilled driver, but the stopwatch told the story. He was a few tenths slower than his prime. He managed only 1 podium in 3 comeback years, and was regularly outpaced by his younger teammate Nico Rosberg. What makes Schumacher's career particularly interesting is that he essentially had 2 peaks. His youth peak in his mid-20s, characterized by raw speed and aggression, and his mature peak in his early 30s, characterized by a more complete, refined driving style. I would argue that his later peak was the more formidable of the two, suggesting that the perfect blend of experience and still strong physical abilities around age 30 to 35 can create a driver's absolute prime. But is there another example of a peak around 30 with similar results? Sure thing, it's Lewis Hamilton. He burst onto the F1 scene at age 22, nearly winning the championship in his 2007 rookie season. He made history the following year by clinching his first title at 23 in 2008, showcasing youthful reflexes and fearless overtaking maneuvers that left more experienced drivers scratching their heads. Many expected Hamilton would only improve with experience, and they were bloody right. After some formative years in his mid-20s where he showed brilliance alongside occasional inconsistency, Hamilton entered an extended prime in his late 20s and early 30s that would rewrite the record books. From 2014, age 29, through 2020, age 35, Hamilton won an astonishing 6 world championships, displaying a masterful blend of raw speed and veteran racecraft that seemed unbeatable. His qualifying pace remained stellar throughout this period. He broke the record for all-time pole positions, while his race management and consistency reached new heights. One could argue Hamilton's peak performance window lasted nearly a decade, roughly from age 25 to 35, with perhaps the absolute apex coming around 2014 to 2018, ages 29 to 33. During this period, he had both unmatched speed and the benefit of experience, a deadly combination. Even as he approached his late 30s, Hamilton showed minimal signs of decline. In 2021, at age 36, he was narrowly runner-up for the title, fighting wheel-to-wheel with a much younger Max Verstappen in one of the most intense championship battles in F1 history. Hamilton's case shows how a driver's peak can be extended when physical fitness is maintained at an elite level and motivation remains high.
Lewis, are you a better driver now than you were in 16?
Yes. And teammate.
Now, this wouldn't be complete without Fernando Alonso, who is an example of truly a special specimen, probably a one-off as well. He became a back-to-back world champion at 24 and 25 in 2005 to 2006, displaying maturity and racecraft far beyond his years. Many assumed Alonso would add many more titles to his late 20s and early 30s, which is typically prime age for F1 drivers, as we've seen before. However, with no more championships for him, mainly due to various career moves and car performance issues, Alonso remained one of the grid's top performers well into his 30s. Notably, at 32 to 33 with Ferrari, he was still regularly outperforming younger teammates and finished as a runner-up in 2013 despite not having the fastest car. His decline, if any, was remarkably gradual. After a brief hiatus from F1, Alonso made a comeback at age 39, an age when most drivers have long since retired. I mean, Michael Schumacher's example we've discussed before should have taught him something. But still, Alonso astonished everyone by securing podiums at 40 to 41 years old in 2022 to 2023. He has adapted his driving style to compensate for any lost youthfulness, his racecraft is now second to none, and his understanding of race strategy is actually insane. Alonso himself insists he's as fast as ever, and while his pure one-lap pace might be fractionally off his younger self, he has proven that a properly motivated driver in his 40s can still shine at the highest level. Alonso has essentially had multiple peaks, one in his mid-20s as a Wunderkind champion and another in his late 20s as a wily veteran performing above and beyond expectations.
It's been a while, to be on the front row together with Fernando. And of course, Fernando is getting a little bit old, but he's still very fast. So I know he starts very well, so I have to be ready.
But Formula One is not betting on those double peaks and maturity of drivers anymore. And all of that happened because of Max Verstappen. Breaking all previous age records, Max debuted at 17, the youngest to ever do it. By 18, had won his first Grand Prix, again, the youngest ever. In those teenage years, Verstappen was undeniably fast, but occasionally erratic. A reminder that experience still matters, even for generational talents. His aggressive overtaking attempts sometimes ended in collisions, and his race management wasn't yet fully developed. Well, Verstappen learned and matured at an astonishing rate. By age 22, he was a consistent race winner, and by 24, he captured the 2021 World Championship in a tense season-long battle with Lewis Hamilton. Many analysts would argue that Verstappen was still improving at that point, and indeed, he only got stronger, dominating the 2022 and 2023 seasons with record-breaking win totals. Verstappen's trajectory suggests his peak may be occurring right now in his mid-20s, which is earlier than was common in past eras. I mean, having started so young, he already has 8+ seasons of F1 under his belt by age 26. If he follows the typical pattern, Verstappen might remain at his top level through his late 20s into his early 30s. The question will be how long he can sustain this extraordinary performance level, possibly for many years, given his talent and the example set by champions like Hamilton before him. Verstappen exemplifies how today's drivers can reach championship form by their early 20s, especially with extensive junior training and early F1 entry, effectively shifting the peak performance window younger. His dominance in his mid-20s challenges the traditional notion that a driver's absolute peak comes in the early 30s.
You don't strike me as someone who's going to be out here racing when you're in your 40s. Like how much longer do you envision racing at this level?
Well, I have a contract until 28, so for sure until then, yeah, as long as I enjoy it, really. That's, I think, enjoy it and being, well, let's say, finding it okay to leave the family also behind.
I'm sure you've already noticed a striking pattern. In the 1950s, the average champion was around 39 years old. This reflected the values of that era. Driving was considered a craft sharpened over many years. By the 1960s, the average dropped to the low 30s, and by the 1970s, champions were typically under 30. A pivotal moment came in 1972 when Emerson Fittipaldi became champion at just 25, the youngest ever at that time. The 1980s and 1990s presented a more balanced picture, with champions typically around 31 or 32 years old, but the 2000s and 2010s tilted decisively toward youth. The average age of a champion from 2010 onward hovers around the late 20s, a stark contrast to the nearly 40-year-old champions of the 1950s. To understand this trend, we need to examine the three ingredients that make a great F1 driver, and how these factors interact with age.
To be behind racing
my
speed.
Goodness me.
Scientific studies indicate that human reaction times peak in the early 20s. One study of quick response tasks found reflexes reach their fastest around age 24. For F1 drivers, these lightning reflexes translate into advantages in starts off the grid and qualifying performance, because it's just one lap pure speed. Analysis of qualifying battles between teammates shows drivers on average get quicker through their early career and are strongest around age 27, after which a gradual decline sets in. Formula One racing is physically brutal. All of those G-forces want to constantly throw you out of the car. If you ain't fit, you ain't making it to the end of the race. Peak aerobic fitness and muscle strength for most people occur in the late 20s to early 30s. Many drivers report reaching their highest strength and stamina levels in their late 20s, giving them an edge in physically demanding races.
Well, the goal is to lead the race in lap 1, so that's 10-1 maximum attack.
Formula 1 isn't just about raw speed, it's about consistency, strategy, and racecraft. This cognitive expertise can compensate for small losses in raw reaction time. Michael Schumacher's raw reaction tests were actually slower than Eddie Irvine's, yet he was faster on track. Why? Because Schumacher anticipated and prepared for events in a way that minimized the need for split-second reflexes. It's important to note that it is not all physical. I mean, men are not becoming men sooner. Today's F1 rookies aren't truly rookies in the traditional sense. Max Verstappen may have been just 17 when he debuted in F1, but he had already been racing competitively for over a decade by that point. Modern F1 drivers typically begin karting at ages 4 to 6 and progress through a highly structured development ladder: karting championships, Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, and finally F1. This systematic approach means that by the time drivers reach F1, they've already accumulated thousands of hours of competitive racing experience. And some say Liam Lawson didn't get enough time practicing. The kid was racing for over 15 years at this point. Secondly, today's drivers maintain Olympic athlete-level fitness regimens that were uncommon in previous eras. Even so, the sheer physicality of modern F1 tends to favor younger bodies, particularly in the most demanding races like Singapore, where cockpit temperatures can approach unbearable levels and races last for 2 grueling hours. Around age 36, you have to train just as hard, but would lose fitness more quickly, illustrating how the recovery advantage of youth becomes increasingly important as drivers age. Remember when Hamilton's back gave out while Russell was just fine in the car? That's exactly what I'm talking about here. And lastly, one of the biggest advantages veteran drivers once held over rookies was track knowledge, understanding the nuances of each circuit, optimal racing lines, and braking points. This experience gap has been significantly narrowed by advanced simulator technology. Young drivers can now accumulate thousands of virtual laps before ever setting foot on a real track. And before we finally answer the question, can Lewis Hamilton beat his younger self in equal machinery? Don't forget to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by F1 summer break, and we've never been closer. Subscribe! So, where is the sweet spot? Research into F1 driver performance supports a complex interplay of these factors. A 2009 quantitative study found that driver age performance curve follows an inverted U-shape with a peak around 30 to 32 years old. In other words, on average, a driver improved through their 20s, hit top form at about 30, and then experienced a decline in their late 30s. More recent modeling suggests today's F1 drivers plateau at a high performance level from 26 to 35, after which performance gradually tails off. Notably, the effect of experience, learning and improving in the first few years of an F1 career can be nearly as large as the effect of aging over a whole career. This explains why a 20-year-old rookie is usually at a disadvantage compared to a 30-year-old veteran, not because the 20-year-old's reflexes are inferior, they're likely faster, but because the 30-year-old has a decade of racing wisdom. The two factors together, gains from experience and losses from aging, tend to create a plateau in the 26 to 35 range where drivers have both speed and experience. So, returning to our opening thought experiment, if a 24-year-old Lewis Hamilton were to race against his 34-year-old self in identical machinery, who would win? The evidence suggests it would be an extraordinarily close battle. The 24-year-old Hamilton would have marginally better reflexes and perhaps a slight edge in raw qualifying pace as well, as might be more likely to produce spectacular overtakes and saves. The 34-year-old Hamilton would have far superior race management, technical understanding, and consistency, as well as make fewer mistakes. So on balance, I would probably give the edge to the 34-year-old Hamilton, representing his absolute peak when experience and physical ability were in perfect balance, but the margin would be razor thin, and on certain tracks, or in certain conditions, the younger version might prevail. This theoretical matchup illustrates the key finding of our exploration. While pure physical abilities peak in the early to mid-20s, the complete package of skills that make a championship-winning F1 driver typically reaches its apex in the late 20s to early 30s. However, after all of this research I've done, I still have one question left. Will we see Hamilton get on the podium one more time, or is he well past his peak? I mean, he's clearly following Michael Schumacher's model, and we should not expect anything spectacular from him. After all, he's trailing Charles from the start of the season, just as our model suggests. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.